Hey, what's up, guys? I already know what you're like, dude. What the hell are you doing with this? Why are you bothering to go over this? Well, I'm gonna put the old video I did up of the Vampire Lestat, the graphic novel adaptation. I'm not gonna lie, I was a fan of the Vampire Chronicles back when I was a teenager in the late '80s. Okay, very gothy, moody, troubled youth, and to Anne's credit, like I said, her writing is the closest thing to like Clark Ashton Smith and Joyce Carl Huysmans that you ever had that was as popular as a best-selling novels as you could have ever had, and also a very bleak, existential, really horrific sort of a universe that is, you beg for help and there's from God and there's nothing, and the loneliness and the weariness, the ennui, right? Uh, the passage of time, right? Everything changing around you. She got that across really well. Of course, the genesis of this was her own, the tragic loss of her daughter from cancer when she was really young, amongst other things. But this, well, I guess when this has finally come out now, we all know the paradigm of now, right? The process. When you look at this, it's very. I don't have to bring up the obvious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention three things to keep my thoughts organized with this, approaching this. One thing I noticed, number one, and you're going to laugh at this. It's very what's the word? It's very gay. Okay? They joke about this being like the gayest thing that's ever been on TV, and they're not wrong. Okay, in the novel, obviously the metaphors, okay, for the blood drinking, the kind of the gender is not as important to the vampires. They don't procreate, right? Of course, there's more to it than that, but and what I had mentioned in the video that I did of the Vampire Lestat graphic novel, Anne was basically writing herself as these male characters. Japanese manga artists, the female artists, did that also in the 70s, and a lot of the work they did. So that's essentially what she was doing. Okay. Well, this thing, I guess the closest thing I can think of is the fan service for the fans that they want. It's funny, as a side note, the commercials on these streaming platforms, my stepdad's like, what the hell is all this HIV medication commercials? There's like 4 different ones, okay? And it's ironic that the majority of the people that's aimed at look like this gentleman here. Like I said, I don't know when this show is on. I don't know if kids are able to watch it, but it's sort of, I would say it's not appropriate, and I mean that in terms of. In terms of the story, in terms of what even Anne had done, and I know she probably would love this show if she was alive to talk about it. Even though she had a problem with the casting of the older film, you can imagine now that she would be all good with this. Okay? This fan fiction of Interview with the Vampire. So that aside, the second thing, the gory violence. Now, there was gory violence in the vampire novels she did. Okay, they were gorier than you think, I mentioned. But the gore in this it's like I mentioned, ironically with Garth Ennis, it's a humiliating, punishing, mutilating, sadistic gore acts that they do to the bad people. Okay, now, the cruelty and sadism that you have, like for example, in the first Interview with the Vampire novel, the hard to read and the hard to watch scene in the original film is when Lestat cruelly terrorizes and slowly kills a prostitute in front of Louis to make a point. Okay? It's a hard scene to read and watch. The fact that it's retconned later in the second novel is beside the point, but it's a hard scene to read and watch. Well, in this novel, in this show, and if you don't believe me, look at the comments, okay, in these clips where you show this. Clips, by the way, that you don't have to sign in for, that are not you don't have to prove that you're an adult to see it or whatever. Look at the comments. The people who enjoy this, they enjoy them punishing the bad people. And if I'm talking about the bad people, what I'm going to go into number 3, which is a common theme. Okay, it's extremely anti-white. Yeah, extremely anti-white. You were supposed to cheer the vampires on in what they do, because the people, people of their time, people who they say a bad word or they think something of someone, so they should be brutally ripped apart, have their eyeballs bitten out, have their jaws ripped off, okay, have their ears ripped off. Wow. This a period film. Once again, it keeps saying that this is adding up to not a good future, let's say. Okay. Now you'll also say, well, Lestat is. It's funny. Lestat actually is sort of like a. In the first episode, from what I've seen, he's sort of like a justice warrior. Right. He was sort of a Shelley type or Byron type, right? An aristocrat who sort of was, for like the people. He wanted to be an actor, right? But it's interesting that he makes Louis because he feels bad for him, how he's treated, right? Whereas in the original novel, he needed a place to, he needed a cover, and that's why he went with him. As a practical thing. Okay. But in this, it's just interesting that Louis sort of takes the center stage over him, and more as a background character. Now, of course, the Claudia character, she tricks Lestat in the original, but in this, she outsmarts him and she shows her superiority to him. Obviously, being the justice, being the progressive Lestat, it doesn't save him either. Okay. Basically, as you know, he becomes the main character of the whole Chronicles. You find out, and I wonder if you're going to do that. The whole point of Interview with the Vampire is that Louis was lying. Okay, Louis was lying to the interviewer. Okay, so are they going to go through with that? Well, like I said, it's alternate. It's fan fiction Interview with the Vampire. I guess not. Okay. That is kind of interesting. That Louis, you're lying, man. Right? That's the whole point of the book. Unless you're one of those people that I sometimes feel like where the original Interview with the Vampire is a standalone book, and then you can add stuff to it. But regardless, those 3 things are the main things that I got from this. And Eric Bogosian, never liked that fucking guy, and he's still an annoying fucking actor to see. You just want to like slap the guy. So, and there's also another transracial reveal at the end, where the vampire Armand, who's actually a great character in the novels. He's an Indian guy from India. Yes. I guess I gave it away. You know what? This is the interview that America in 2022 deserves. That's my final judgment on it. Later. As usual, I have something to add. Right? If you want to really be transgressive, okay, I had mentioned the Vampire Lestat sort of overturns a lot of what happened in Interview with the Vampire. Okay, obviously they're not going to do that with the unreliable narrator idea. But let's see. If they really want to be subversive, okay, they should have, if they were going to do this thing they were going to do, right? Well, they should have made Lestat they should have switched they should have transracialized the two. Lestat should have been the black vampire. Yeah, wouldn't that have been interesting? He would have been the villain. Okay, and you'd say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, if you're familiar with the history of France, if you're familiar with the history of Saint Domingo, many of the French plantation owners in that very profitable colony, right, with its its roots of slavery, roots sunk into the very depths of hell, as Lothrop Stoddard had described it. The plantation owners had many children with the slave women and free black women. Many of these mixed race sons and daughters were actually sent to France and educated. There was, I think, a society, the Friends of the Blacks. Obviously, it was in French. I don't remember the French. So to have a mixed race Lestat would have been very possible. Wouldn't have that been interesting? Wouldn't have that have been transgressive and progressive? He comes to America. He finds a white French Creole and turns him, and he becomes his master. Wouldn't that have been very interesting? Well, of course, the problem in the end with that also is that, well, that he sort of is the villain, isn't he? I'm just thinking that if they really wanted to have a little guts and shake things up, they should have done that. Okay, but Louis, in some ways, is a very passive character. Anne had described that. And to have it assigned to this gentleman here, well, they seem to do that a lot, don't they, in entertainment? Okay, this is where the brothers, the real deal brothers, notice this, and they don't appreciate it, by the way. But I just thought that would have been interesting if Lestat had been the mixed race character, and that would have been interesting. But hey, man, hey, I want to get paid for these suggestions and these ideas. Anyway, enough. Later.